I am Ralph Shearing, President CEO of Altaley Mining Corporation. We are a growing producing company in Mexico with one mine operating, second mine coming on stream imminently, and we expect to be a mid-tier producer towards the end of this year.
Ralph, good to meet you. Thanks for coming on the show. We've not met or spoken before, so I always like new stories coming onto the platform. Can we just kick off and try and understand who you are, what you've done, and what's relevant to the business that you're now in charge of?
Sure. Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Well, I'm a professional geologist. I'm actually an exploration geologist. I founded this company many years earlier than I'd care to admit at this point in time, but I'm a bit stubborn and I don't like to give up. So I started getting interested in Mexico in 95, found Tahuehueto in 97, and we acquired Campo Morado in 2017. So, I've had a long history of mineral exploration development, and then over the last 5-6 years, I've had a very good education in mining, and we have a great team in Mexico. They're pushing our projects, running them, and pushing them forward. We know how to operate in Mexico, and we expect to continue to do so.
Okay, fantastic. Look, doing the research on this project, I was sort of intrigued by bits of it, and I didn't understand other bits of it. So, for instance, if I'm looking at your share price in sort of 2022, you get up to 80 cents. You're down at 34 cents now. So, someone got excited about something, or someone got very disappointed about something. So what was happening around that time? What do we need to know?
Well, we had our funding fully in place for our Tahuehueto construction. That's the gold mine we're building and putting in production. And then the 12 million of that was with a Mexican bank called Hacienda Banco. We had drawn about half of that funding, and then they got into some liquidity problems. The government pulled their license, and that put them into a receivership. So we lost that funding, the next $6 million. So that left us in a little bit of a hole, but our Campo Morado project was performing very well, making great money. We've been able to pull out about $8 million of free cash flow out of that to help continue to fund our Tahuehueto project. And then we are just raising a private placement, finishing off a private placement now to provide any other money that we might need to bring the project into production. So, as any project, when you're getting it up and you're starting up, there might be little problems. We were raising a small amount just to guard against those little problems if we run into them.
So where are you now with the balance sheet? Because I noticed the $5 million private placement recently. Was that just a topping up because the Tahuehueto project would take a little bit longer to come online, or was that to top up some other commitments elsewhere? Why did you raise that money, for instance?
It was a protection, okay? And so like I mentioned just a minute ago, when you start up a project, you never know what might happen when you're trying to get a mill up and running. This was a protection to guard against any problems we may have when we start up. So we just had enough money to complete the construction, get it up, but it was so tight that if anything went sideways, we might fall behind on our working capital. And that's why we raised that 5 million Canadian. So we're just finishing that off now.
Right. Okay. And so again, let's stick with the money for a bit, if you don't mind. So you talk about obviously Q4. Just under 20 million bucks Canadian net revenue, up on Q3, Q2, etc. So the trend is quite nice there. What is the current cash position for you?
We have, with the private placement proceeds coming in now, we've got about 4.5 million Canadian committed to that, and we have about $3.5 million US in the bank account right now.
Right. So what's happening with all this cash that you're throwing off? Because you talk about it's
Sure.
a net revenue number, I guess at an asset level rather than company, right?
Yeah. If you look at Campo Morado, it's thrown off about $2.5–3 million EBITDA monthly. So we are positive cash flow there. So that's obviously helping us a lot as well.
But what are you doing with that? Is that going up into Tahuehueto, or is that applying back into?
Up until we raised the private placement, it was flowing to help fund Tahuehueto. Now that we've got the private placement in, it can keep the money now and start looking at future exploration, future improvements, debt payments, etc.
Right. Okay. So when Tahuehueto is up and running, obviously there's a ramp up period, and we'll get into that in a second. But when do you think it'll stop needing to be subsidized by either fundraising or revenues coming out of Campo Morado?
within 2 to 3 months of initial production. So our initial production is 500 tons per day with one ball mill. Mid this year, the second ball mill should be operational. By the time that second ball mill becomes operational, or very shortly thereafter, it'll be self-sufficient.
Okay, understood. Okay, great. Well, let's come to the project in a minute. So, can we talk about Campo Morado? Obviously, actually, I tell you what I want to talk about is you and why you're back at the helm running this. That I want to get into that before we kind of get into what you've been able to do with improving efficiencies, etc. So you've had to step back in to the breach here, haven't you?
Yeah, we in 2015, a very hard time in the industry. Our company was about ready to go under, and I couldn't support it myself anymore. I met a Mexican group that came in, helped fund and get the company back on its feet, and really start to push the bulk sampling pre-production at Tahuehueto. In early 2020, the CEO, I passed the CEO position over to the Mexican fellow that helped fund. In 2020, the CEO resigned, and I came back in and took over the CEO position again, and helped drive the company forward.
Right. So, and what about the rest of the board? What's that look like?
Yes, in 2021, we had a reconstitution of the board. We brought in a very strong board of directors. Okay, guy David Rhodes out of the UK, Endeavour Financial, came in as the chairman. We have two really good technical people join the board. Tom Kelly, who's 40-year plus underground mining experience, exactly the type of guy we need to oversee and help us. And then Mark Bailey, former promoter and operator in Mexico. He ran Mine Finders for a long period of time. Excellent guy. We just brought in a lot of extra help, and corporate governance was brought into a much stronger role in the company with another director called Natasha Kernan. She excels in corporate governance. She's a lawyer. So we've really brought in a great team, great oversight, and it's shown on the company's performance. Right.
Okay. So balance sheet needed a little boost and sorting out. You put in a difficult position there by the liquidity issues at that bank. You've changed the board. With regards, so let's maybe get into the projects proper. So when we're looking at Campo Morado, obviously zinc prices are doing wonderful things at the moment, but it's relatively low grade stuff. So you have to make efficiencies there, and obviously rely on the zinc price, to help you do a little bit of heavy lifting there. But what else is going on there? What can we expect to see? Because obviously the money that's been produced there has gone up to the other project. Does it need a bit more love and attention from you, and a little bit more money spent on it to kind of really make the thing sing?
A couple of things about Campo Morado, and yes, it does need a bit of love and care, and we're giving that to us. But Campo Morado isn't necessarily a low-grade deposit. In fact, it's a fairly high-grade volcanogenic massive sulfide deposit. Okay, it's got excellent precious metals and good zinc and good copper, but the metallurgy is tough on Campo Morado. So from the gold, we have about a gram. I think it's 1.6 grams gold per ton in the global average, and we got 126 grams per ton silver on the global average. The trouble is we're only getting about 15-20% of the gold right now, and we're getting 30-40% of the silver. So that makes it a little difficult. So it's known as a metallurgically difficult project. However, we've been able to stabilize our recoveries, especially in zinc. And then we're doing what I term as a full court press on metallurgy. We've been working on the metallurgy for about 8 months now, and we've been testing pneumatic flotation, which is a flotation method that excels when you go to a microfine grind. And that's what it looks like we're going to have to do at Campo Morado. Go down to a really fine grind in order to liberate your minerals, which should increase our recoveries. And then the gold and silver, we're going to be doing other testing to sort of forced oxidation and leaching testing and various ways to try and recover the gold. And our initial work is starting to show some promise. So we think we're going to be able to, in another quarter or so, have that figured out and know which directions we need to go to help increase the precious metal recovery. Plus, mid this month, late this month, we'll be starting to produce copper. We've only been producing a lead concentrate and a zinc concentrate, but we're moving to an ore body that has higher grade copper. So we'll be producing a copper concentrate mid to late this month as well. And that's going to increase our revenues as well.
Okay, and so that copper, when that copper circuit goes in, yeah, I'd be intrigued to see, what that looks like. So just with regards to the concentrate and the difficulty around the recoveries, where are you looking to in terms of inspiration for how you improve things? Because there's a bit of science and a bit of black art in here too. Who's the guy that's looking after, or who's the company looking after this? And what are the targets you're setting?
Sure. So we've got a couple of good metallurgists on site, but we hired a very senior consulting metallurgist named Rodrigo Canario, and he's done an excellent job, and step by step. Metallurgy is a slow process, step by step, and testing this, testing that, and as you get success, you go on to the next stages. So he's been overseeing it, and then we hired a group out of the UK called Melbourne Mineral Services, and we brought one of their pilot plants on site. We tried that. I don't believe we gave it as good a test as we could have, because we didn't at that time, weren't able to get down to the microfine grind. So now we're just finishing up with a Jameson cell. That's a Glencore technology pilot plant that's been on site. We've had some good results on that. And we hope to test another one called Woodgrove, but we're not there yet. So all of these technologies are the kind of competing technologies to improve your base metal recoveries and precious metal recoveries. But the next stage after that is into this forced oxidation and leaching. And at Campo Morado, the previous owners went through first phase testing with the Albion process and the leach ox process, which are competing technologies for forced oxidation and leaching. And they were both really good. In fact, the leach ox came in and increased gold recoveries by 400%, up from 15 to 60% recoveries in gold on the tests that they did. And silver was up 200% from 30 to 40 to 80%. So that's what we're targeting. That's where we'd like to get to. And Campo Morado is even a little bit more difficult because each ore body is different than the other one. So it's a lot of test work we need to do, but we're starting to show progress. So we think we're going to get there. Okay,
and so these, testing in a lab and testing at with bulk samples, and then obviously trying to build it do it at economic levels. What sort of time frame we're looking at? Because that's impressive. 400% on the gold, brilliant. 200% on the silver, brilliant. But how long is it going to take? How much more does it cost, and how does it affect margins? How much more are you going to make?
Yeah. Okay. So, and I don't have all the answers to that. What I can tell you is we believe in one more quarter, 3 to 4 months, we'll have our pathway. We'll have the testing completed. We'll know what works and what doesn't. And then it's a matter of getting the engineers involved to first pick the technology. If it's Albion, if it's leach ox, then you have to design the plant and find out what it's going to cost, and then you have to build it, fund it and build it. So I don't have a good feel for it. What we believe we can do is start out reprocessing one of the existing tailings facilities that has a lot of metal in it, because the recoveries were poor, and there's a lot of metal in that. It would simply be a regrind and a process through one of these pneumatic flotations, and then forced oxidation and leaching. Or we might even be able to, we've actually tested and made a pyrite concentrate. So if we can make a precious metal rich pyrite concentrate and sell that, then we don't need the capital to actually try to recover on site. We would get credit for the selling the pyrite concentrate with the gold.
Okay, and so you're going to have to go through a process of, let me ask the question. Are you going to have to do a study on that? Because you got to work out, there's a big cost to the kind of additional kind of capex and opex component to that for whatever upside you think or hope you can get, and you have to work out the economics whether it's worth doing or not. So again, how long is that study process going to take?
Either way we go, any one of the ways we go is going to need a cost estimate and a study to show the proper way, figure out what it's going to cost. And so I don't have the answer for you what our capital cost expectations are for that. I don't believe they'll be large because of the way we're approaching it right now. If the pyrite concentrate is saleable, then it's just a matter of flotation cells, pneumatic flotation cells, and a regrind. So that's not a huge cost. But again, it's too early to tell.
Right. No, but I was more asking about the time frame of a study like that. How long?
Sure.
Because your shareholders are really looking, right, okay, we need to improve recoveries. So I need to work if we can, what we can get, and how the arena changes, because they know where you're at now. Can it get better, and how long is that going to take to work out?
Okay, so I would say answer that by it's a two-step process. One right now is the pneumatic flotation works to improve our base metal recoveries. That's an easy one. These pneumatic flotation cells are about $1 million a piece, and they replace 6-8 flotation cells that we already have. So we would need maybe 1 or 2 of those to install in the circuit that we have right now. That's simple, and that could happen really quickly. So let's say we figure out our pathway by mid this year, 1 more quarter. And then if we need to fund a couple of pneumatic flotation cells, it's a matter of just, we'll have the money from cash flow and just do it. It wouldn't be that onerous. The forced oxidation and leaching is going to be more capital. It's going to be, I won't be able to give you a good answer of how much, but I would hope to have the engineering work, if we know what the metallurgical program is showing us by the end of the next quarter, then I would say we would be 1 more quarter to engineer it, and then another quarter to raise the money, maybe early next year, and start installing it.
Got it. Understood. Okay, that's really useful. Also,
and then, that's a best guess at this point.
For sure. With regards to the kind of copper circuit coming online, you've obviously got some idea of economics in your head, or you wouldn't be doing it. So, what do you think that's going to add to the party?
It's a good question. I haven't looked hard at the statements, but it's going to, I would say, it's going to increase our revenues by at least a quarter, maybe more than we already have. So if we did, $19 million net revenue in Q4, let's add another quarter to that.
Okay, so 23 and a half for 24, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good question. I better get back and study that a little bit more, so I have that at the tip of my tongue.
Okay. So obviously, right. So I guess what I'm trying to do is understand Campo Morado, you feel is in good hands with the team. They have been set some targets and some goals, and they're working towards that, which is basically around, let's get more out of the ore. Let's reduce our costs by being way more efficient. And then see, what the contribution from that project is to, I guess, the company's bottom line rather than just the project bottom line. Okay, great, understood. I think I understand. So can we go up to Tahuehueto, please? Which is obviously a new project. Well, you're telling me it's going to be going into production imminently? What does that mean?
I mean, in days.
Okay.
Literally days. Okay. So with what we've installed, 1 ball mill, it's all ready to go. We're just going through a testing phase right now. So in any new project, any new construction project, you're going to have a period of time of testing things, making sure all the bugs are out of it. So that started. I'm hoping that by this weekend, we'll have the ball mill operating properly, and then sometime next week start feeding ore into it to start we call it pre-production, because we're not allowed to call, the regulators don't allow us to call it production until you've declared commercial production.
Yeah.
So it's pre-production until we go into commercial production.
Right. Okay. So before I kind of get into the kind of questions around ramp up, et cetera, is you've obviously got the pre-feasibility study and updated mineral reserves resource estimate on that. Can you give us the kind of headline numbers just for people new to the story?
The reserves right now are about 3.8 million tons. And it's a underground bulk mining method, sub-level stoping on that. So it's going to be low cost mining. We're about 2.8 grams gold, silver, maybe an ounce of silver per ton. And then zinc's probably 2.5%. So, it's primarily a gold project. There's 70% of the value of this project is gold. And we'll produce about 25,000 ounces of pure gold on an annual basis at 1,000 tons per day. And we're going to, on a gold equivalent basis, probably in the 40 to 45,000 ounces if you include all metals to a gold equivalent.
Okay, and what are the margins on that? I get 2.8. I guess it's not too bad.
Yeah, this is a robust project. So the cost, all-in sustaining costs are estimated about $865 per gold equivalent ounce.
Right. So that's the all-in sustaining. In terms of the wider kind of project, if we look at it, trying to understand what other investments going to be needed further down the line. What does this look like? When does it start standing on its own 2 feet?
Well, immediately. Well, okay. So we bring the second ball mill online mid this year,
right?
And it's already standing on its own 2 feet. Within a month, it should be cash positive.
Okay.
Okay, and that includes servicing debt, the whole works. It's a robust project.
Right, and life of mine on that. Sorry, just.
It's about 10.9 years with that reserve.
Okay.
There's also an equivalent amount, just similar amount available in M&I resources. So, if we brought that M&I resource up into reserve, we could double that mine life. So that's, that 20 plus years mine life is fairly long. And then we see expansion possibilities. I know this project really well. I've been involved with it for 20 some odd years. And all we need to do is start drilling again, and we can quickly add to the resources, the reserves, and justify an expansion. I'm hoping to expand this project 1,500 to 2,000 tons within the next year and a half to 2 years. And it's simply 6 months of drilling. We should have enough resources to justify the expansion. And then we're built it modular, so we can add to it and we can increase the size of it. So that's the hope.
Well, okay, but let's talk about that, because I think it's something that it feels like this story needs, right? This story seems to have lurched from one set of problems to solve to the next set of problems to solve to finance it needs to raise. And look, don't get me wrong, I think you've been able to go and find money when you needed it. But do you know what I mean? If I'm looking in from outside, it's kind of lost its sheen somewhat, because but despite, and I say that, and I mean that in a good way, in the sense that people aren't looking at production assets, but there's no blue sky upside, sex and sizzle to this thing anymore, because you've been in problem solving mode. So talk to me about the exploration component. Tell me about what you know, and tell me about when you think you'll be able to allocate more money or the right amount of money for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Both of our projects have excellent exploration potential. I see great organic growth in both of these projects. I am hoping that we will be able to start drilling at Tahuehueto in Q4 of this year, and I think we can make that. Once the project starts self-sustaining, cash is available, then we can start turning some drills. And I believe within 3 months to 4 months, that would give us enough resources to justify starting to plan expansion at Tahuehueto. So, maybe we can start an expansion within late in the first year of production. Full scale production. So mid next year, start planning that and implementing it for the late the following year. That's kind of the plan. And a lot of people think I'm way overconfident on my assessment of exploration potential, but I tell you, this is an epithermal district, and we own 80% of the district, and we've only explored along one structure, and there is at least 8 more that are mineralized that we haven't even looked at, and we haven't even found the limits of the mineralization to depth or along strike on the one we have resources and reserves on. So the potential is enormous, and it's just a function of money to start developing it again.
Okay, so it's big. It's big. It's district-wide potential. Story we hear a lot, but you've got to get out there and start doing it and start drilling. And how easy is that for you at the moment in terms of people coming on here talking about supply chain issues and we can't get drills and we can't get teams and how much are you in control of and how much do you have to buy in on the exploration side?
We don't see any difficulty whatsoever of getting drills on site to explore. They'd be underground drills, primarily. It's more cost effective. We now have the access underground from our development plan. And so as soon as we have the necessary cash, that one drill, maybe 2 drills will go on and we'll start drilling.
Okay, and I want to come back to the cash that this Tahuehueto throws off, because I'm trying to understand what you do with it. Okay, because you're talking about both projects have exploration potential. Do you also need to do something else? Because you're saying to the market, hey, look at us. We've shown you that we can get into production in Mexico. We know what we're doing. Complex problems we've solved, but we've done it. We've got a project which we're in Tahuehueto with a sort of post tax NPV 5 of 110, which is kind of, it's okay. It's all right. You want to make that bigger for sure. Do you need to look elsewhere or allocate your capital elsewhere on another project, which perhaps it isn't so difficult?
Our plans are threefold. Explore at both Tahuehueto and Campo Morado to increase resources reserve.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that there's two prongs right there. Third one is search for and acquire. All right. We want to grow this company. We want to, we want to put our name on the map as a mid-tier to larger producer over the next 3 to 5 years. And we think we'll be a mid-tier producer at the end of this year with the 2 mines.
Okay.
So that's the goals. Definitely acquire. Once we want to get a better market cap so we can use our stock for acquisitions, number one. So to me, that's the end of this year. Our stock is a little hesitant right now because of a large debt load, because of the failure of the Mexican bank that hurt us quite a bit, and then delivering Tahuehueto into production. We're slightly behind on that, but when I look at a large scale production project that's this in a remote area of Mexico, 1 or 2 months isn't really that far behind. I've always said that we were hoping to get the mine into production near the end of 2021. Well, we're still pretty close to near the end of 2021, slightly behind.
So given the you're talking about remoteness and so forth, and obviously we mentioned supply chain issues and rising costs, inflation, etc. Are you concerned at all that your costs are going to spiral out of control, or do you feel that, I don't know, what do you feel about operating a mine in a remote district in Mexico?
Out of control, no. Will the costs go up? They might go up, all right. But at the same time, metal prices are going up, and remember, Tahuehueto is robust. We're $850 gold equivalent ounce production, all in sustaining. So we've got a lot of profit margin there, so we can sustain a little bit higher prices. We'll do our best to keep them low, and we'll keep the project running as efficiently as possible. But it can take higher prices. Okay,
so I'll get onto the zinc project. So obviously, zinc prices have had a wonderful time for the last 12, 18 months, right? Compared to where they were in 2020, even certainly before that. And they're singing at the moment. But and we know the reasons why, right? So it's all obvious. But for whatever reason, if the market goes a little bit quiet again, at what price do you get a little bit nervous about? How you manage things at Campo Morado?
Okay, so if we were producing steady state zinc as we have in the past couple of years, then you get nervous if zinc is approaching the dollar level. Our all-in sustaining costs through 2021 were calculated at about 87 cents per pound of zinc equivalent. All right, so when you're getting lower than $1, you're starting to stress your cash flows, your profit margin. That is if the project wasn't improved. All right. So we are improving it, number one, by introducing copper. We're going to start producing copper. So that's a big improvement right there. And then with all the metallurgical testing, we're hoping to bring those costs down, recoveries up a lot more. So, we'll see what develops, but maybe I hope that answers your question.
If
the project doesn't change. Yeah.
It does. And then the next following question from that is, if we look at the 2 projects, these kind of polymetallics projects as you position them. And this is why I mentioned the third arm here, which is the find and acquire or find and bring on, however advanced exploration, development even, because you've got a certain set of skills, is when you first something simpler than the polymetallic, because it's complicated, but I guess it reduces the competition somewhat, but surely a simpler to understand and simpler to manage project would also be quite nice in the portfolio.
Oh, a pure gold play or a pure copper play would be nice. We're not opposed to that, but we're not opposed to polymetallics. Polymetallics they're good. And you know, Mexico, most of the gold and silver producers down there, they're polymetallic producers. They don't say that, but they believe me, they're producing lead and zinc, but they're concentrating on the silver. Silvers and, you know, First Majestic, or gold is in some of the other ones. So, but believe me, if you look at their balance sheet, they are producing a bit of.
But that's my point. I think it's hard for, say, retail investors or family office investors to understand polymetallic. So it kind of always has been. It was like that when I was in banking, quite frankly, with guys who should know better. But in terms of telling the story and telling the narrative, it feels more complicated. People don't quite know where to look. Whereas I can understand why some of these Mexican players just say, well, we're silver. We'll focus on silver equivalent. It's easier to sell, as it were. So. Yeah, that's why I asked the question.
How you dress you up and advertise yourself, right? So I think once Tahuehueto comes on stream, we'll have a good argument to say that we are a primary precious metal producer. All right, and we may start to market ourselves that way, but we have a strong base metal component, especially at Campo Morado.
Okay, so right, so I've heard the story. And today's the first time we've spoken, right? So I'm more interested in hearing your version of, you know, all the moving parts and, you know, how they've come together and what you've, you know, yet to do. So the yet to do bit. Let's finish with that, right? So you've overcome a bunch of problems, difficulties. You're now going to have, or soon have, like 2 producing assets, which you are going to make as efficient as possible. So that's great news. And the market will do, metal prices will do their thing for you too. So what are we looking at for the rest of this year from you, given that you've kind of really sort of got on top of the balance sheet side of things?
Just increase your cash flows as much as possible. Start, you know, continuing to service our debt and maybe even accelerate our debt payments and get that out of the way and then off our back.
What's the debt at the moment?
We're about $38 million in debt. Okay, 28 of that is to Trafigura Nearstar, our main off-taker. The rest is a little bit to our major shareholder. So, you know, that Tahuehueto alone can pay that off in about 2.5 years. Okay. So with Campo Morado performing very well, you know, we may be able to pay that off in 1.5 or 2 years, or just as quickly as we can. Now that's primarily what we want to get done, but really high on my priority list is get exploration going on both of these projects as fast as possible and continue to look for another acquisition.
Right. And so obviously, because you've kind of got off take there, you aren't able to refinance them out. That's by the terms of the deal, presumably. So that's not an option for you.
No, it is. I mean, if we found a primary lender that could give us extend our terms, the terms 2.5 years at Campo and 3-year term pay back our debt at Tahuehueto. So if we were to find someone that was willing to step in and give us a 5-year or 8-year term on that, that would really help because it would free up a lot of our cash flow. We could get our development exploration going quicker, just speed things up.
So that's a possibility. That's a possibility.
Yeah, it is definitely a possibility.
Okay, and that's really interesting, especially around the exploration, because it comes back to how much cash you're going to be able to throw off and how much free cash, more importantly, you're going to be able to throw off to put towards that exploration component, because I think that's where you start to be able to talk the narrative around scale. You know, we can take advantage of, because, you know, just otherwise the district is, quite frankly, no more than a liability and a cost to you. So that's exciting. If you can get to that point and maybe at some point look at a refinance component. But anyway, great. more for another discussion. Look, I appreciate your time today, Ralph. Nice to hear the story. I like problem solvers, and I like the fact that you stepped in here and starting to get these things to move forward, and also more importantly, take care of the money side of things too. So stay in touch. Let us know how you get on. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and I really appreciate the opportunity to tell our story. I mean, I think we have a great story, and I think people should likely embrace it and get involved with us because we've got a good future ahead of ourselves.